Hello and welcome to Chakra News. After the recent US airstrikes hit three of its nuclear sites, Iran is reportedly considering shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow but vital waterway through which nearly 20% of the world's oil supply flows. Now, this move threatens to disrupt global energy markets, spark regional tensions, and challenge major economies across the globe. So, what happens now? Joining us to shed light on this issue is Captain Naveen Singhal. Sir, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Deepak, for having me here.
So,
nice to be with you. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
let's just start with the basics here. What are the Straits of Hormuz and why they seem so important?
Right. Straits of Hormuz is, it's like it's a narrow passage as you enter the Gulf. So the Gulf is it's sort of like a cradle, the Gulf. So it enters the entrance point. That's the Hormuz, and that's the Straits of Hormuz, and that's about roughly 30 nautical miles wide. Roughly 30 nautical miles, right? Now, this Straits of Hormuz itself is a small island, which is the property of Iran, which is about roughly 25, 30 miles north of the Straits itself, which is closer to the Iranian coast near Bandar Abbas. Bandar Abbas is another port in Iran. So the Straits is the place from where roughly about you can imagine about 120, 130 ships transit each day in and out of the Gulf through that, and roughly you can say about 20% of the entire global oil, is moving out from here. So this is a very, very important strategically, and even in the past, like we have had, some. I don't know whether you are aware, but there was a war which lasted for almost 8 years. From 1980 to 1988. So at that time also there were, this disruption in the Straits of Hormuz, but not a closure as such. And I have a lot of experience being on vessels transiting in the war zone areas in those years also. So it's a very important passage, very critical, and it's controlled predominantly by Iran.
So you just mentioned that there was a long war in which there was some issues. Obviously, a lot of merchant vessels that passed through it were endangered because there was always the danger that you would be caught amidst the hostilities. But today, it
Right.
seems kind of unprecedented that Iran is planning to choke it or blockade it. Now, how serious is this threat? Because even in the past, Iran has made such threats before. And what has changed this time?
Right. Okay. So Iran has, even in the 80s, they had their naval ships out there, naval boats, and in the entrance, and they were monitoring the vessels coming in and out, but they did not ever block any vessel. So there was no blockage as such in the past. They have been talking about it, but it's never. So far, Hormuz has never been blocked, and
Right.
I think, like it is, if you look at it, because I'm not a sort of an expert in that area. Maritime is my domain, but what I understand is that it is unlikely Iran is going to block the Straits of Hormuz, because it's going to be also detrimental to their own business and to their own vessels as well. So it is, and also we have to remember, see, there is something known as territorial waters. Now, Iran has a part of the territorial waters belongs to Iran, a part of it is with Oman, right? So, and a part of it you can also say is with the United Arab Emirates. So the thing is that while Iran can lay claim on the 12 nautical mile stretch and can do, but it is not in a position to go beyond that. So the whole stretch is about 30 nautical miles, although there is a passage which is closer to the the coast of the United Arab Emirates, which is not where ships don't navigate normally. But there is no problem in navigation, because I've done it. We bypassed in the 1980s. We had a very daring master, and we bypassed the entire Straits of Hormuz and came through the islands out there. And we were called up by the Iranian Navy as to what you are up to. And we had about something like some 14 meters draft. 14 meters is something like having 45 feet of as a loaded tanker. So we knew that we are not doing the right thing, and we never knew that we'll be spotted by the Iranian Navy. So one thing is there, that their passages are there, but I don't think Iran is going to do that, because it will also not be, the other Arab nations, Saudi, United Arab Emirates, and Iraq. They're not going to be very happy about it.
So let's consider the worst case scenario, because that's how security analysts and how this system works.
Yeah.
Let's consider that Iran actually does pull off the threat that they've just made.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
see the short term and the long term effects of such an action? Obviously, you stated that it may, it may actually raise shackles in the Middle East, and it would cause a lot of, say, pain to economies globally. Could you shed some light on this?
So now, if you look at the the figures, so as far as India is concerned, one thing, of course, globally, yeah, just the threat itself in the last 1 week, 8 days of the war, the oil prices have shot up from about 60, 62 to about $78 a barrel, and this is, as per experts, this is likely to increase, and it may even go up to 110, $120 a barrel. But the impact of this, countries will start feeling it only after 2 or 3 weeks, when the consumer has to pay a higher price. So yes, indeed, this is going to be the immediate impact globally for all countries. Now, as far as India is concerned, we are importing roughly about 45, 50% of our oil needs right from overseas. That's international imports. But and out of this roughly 50%, we are getting roughly, you can say, half of this is coming from the Gulf nations, which is Iraq, Saudi, and United Arab Emirates. We're not taking any oil at the moment from Iran because of the sanctions, right? And the
Right.
remaining we are getting from other countries like Russia and US. Okay. Now the thing is that if suppose they do something like blocking the Hormuz or disrupting traffic out there, and if the tankers, because the insurance rates are going to pick up, increase, the ship owners may decline to even go there in such a threat. Like recently, just today's news, the Singapore International Airlines has stopped flights for the next 1 week, all flights to UAE and Gulf countries, right, due to the threat. So there's a good chance that we will be impacted. Now, let's look at the scenario. Saudi has ports in the Red Sea, right? Saudi has ports in the Red Sea, so we can go to Red Sea and pick up oil from there. Now, United Arab Emirates, we don't need to get in there. We can get Fujairah is one of the 7 emirates, and that's outside in the Gulf of Oman. So we can do some transshipment there itself. Some transshipment can be done there, and some can be organized there. And the what's remaining is Iraq. Now, Iraq is not something which has anything outlet out there other than what they have in the Shatt al Arab River and in the in the what is that in the northern part of the Gulf, that particular place where they have these uh, ports for tankers. So Iraq is going to be a point from where we can be routing Iraq. Now, another option is that we don't have any sort of oil coming from Oman, but Oman could be another option. I do not know whether the government can make a treaty with them or something, because that's outside the Gulf. It will be in the future. It will be always good to have somebody which is outside the Gulf where the threat is much less. Even the distance wise, it's closer to India. So these are some of the options we have on the table. Iraq, yes. How are they going to route that? Because Iraq is going to be a bit tricky, because they don't have any ports.
I would also want you to shed some light on your own experiences. In your conversation, I recall now that this
Yeah,
was the Iran-Iraq war, and at that
yeah,
point,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, at that point,
yeah.
Indian merchant vessels were still plying it. Tell me,
Right.
what is it like to be a part of a merchant vessel which is going through such territory where there are obvious dangers, not just to the ship but to your
Yeah.
own life.
Yeah, so this war lasted for 8 years, and India, at that time we were getting all our oil from Gulf, most of it, and so we had all our tankers uh, uh, going up and down. And in those years, it used to be like you've got to be not a favorite, and you get on the tankers, because most of the sailors did not want tankers because of the very short port stay. So some of the less privileged like me, we got the tankers and we continued to sail on tankers, but that helped us a lot later on. But anyway, coming back to the war, the war zone at that time, India was a neutral nation. So India was friendly with Iran and with Iraq. So what India was told by Iran and Iraq is, the ship, you have so the plane is flying on the top, you have the ship. So we used to write India on the ship side in, something like maybe 10, 12 feet high letters, big ones, and on the deck itself. So the plane can see on the top India, so they will not harm the vessel, right? Because they see India as a neutral. So India was okay with Iran and Iraq, but there was a problem. And the problem is that if you go to Iranian port, then you are under Iraqi threat, because Iraq is going to attack the Iranian side. And if you're going to an Iraqi port, then Iran is likely to be, targeting you. So if you're going to a Saudi port, Ras Tanura and the Saudi ports, it's okay because they are neutrals. They won't attack there. But a lot of our oil was coming from Iran, and we used to go there. So we used to actually be going at navigating in complete darkness, which is blackout. That means once we enter a certain area, because once you cross a certain latitude in the Hormuz, the war zone starts. So once the war zone starts, there was a certain protocol that we had to keep all our lights off, dim it up. And then as we approach certain ports and terminals, particularly the Iranian terminals, there were strict restrictions on the lights. That means we had to be a complete blackout. And very important, we used to use the radar for navigation. So we can't use the radar because remember the radar is emitting, what do you call, very high frequency signals, and these can be captured by the aircrafts. In other words, on a radar, I can pick up an aircraft which is flying not very high. I can pick it up. So the aircraft can pick up the signal. So if the aircraft picks up a signal, they know there's a ship. Now this is nighttime, so they know there's a ship there. So we had to put off our radar, plot the position, and switch it off. And again, switch on maybe after another 15, 20 minutes, for 1 or 2 minutes, plot the position. And so we were doing all this sort of navigation out there. And then one of the SCI vessels, the Shipping Corporation of India, because most of the tankers were with the Shipping Corporation of India, where I was also working. This one of their vessels, a VLCC, that's a very large crude carrier, by the name of Kanchenjunga, was also accidentally, there was a shell out there. The damage was not much, but there was a shell. And there was another vessel, another Indian vessel, where the shell actually, I think, penetrated the cabin, the accommodation, and I think a couple of people died in that. But that was all. This is accidental, because there's one very interesting thing that when we were in an Iranian port, uh, the pilot who used to bring our ship in is also the loading master. And by the way, we are doing all our loading operations in blackout. It was complete blackout, so we had to keep a torch and use it very carefully. So we came to know that they had shot their own plane. An Iranian, what do you call, a missile had shot an Iranian plane. So we just asked him. He says, "Hello, pilot." So he said in a typical Iranian, "Oh, sometime it happened. It happened with a mistake. We don't know. We try not to hit, but it sometimes hits." So that was something which amused us. So we knew one thing for sure, that if they can shoot their own planes down by mistake, then something can happen with the other ships as well. So those times were very tricky. The only thing is that, and there was another thing I must tell you. What was happening is there was a suicide squad. The suicide squad would go to a place where SCI did not, the Shipping Corporation, where they did not take their ships into that region. And that was complete north of the Gulf. And there, when you come to Fujairah, there used to be a crew change. So the whole crew disembarks, and a suicide squad gets in, and their salary must be 3 or 4 times, because you don't know whether they're going to reach there and come back safely or not. But Shipping Corporation of India did not have that procedure. We only went maximum up to an island called Kharg Island, which is an Iranian terminal, and where we used to load oil. So that itself was a very high risk area. But then I think we took that, did our due diligence. The owners and on the ship, we used to follow certain procedures at that time.
So that is fascinating because of the experience that you just shared. And I can't help but think that this is an experience, if not the blackout measures, but many of these experience, I imagine a number of Indian merchant Navy sailors and technicians may have still gone through in the past few years. You remember when there was this whole issue with the Houthis. Again, it was
Yes.
Indian vessels who would always be there, and India's neutrality would help them to an extent. But moving forward, sir, what do you think happens now? You've already stated that there is a lesser likelihood that Iran will actually be able to enforce a blockade. But should a blockade happen, do you see a larger regional war? This is, after all, 20% of the world's Brent oil is passing through this. And in an energy hungry world, I imagine that will raise a lot of concern. Do you see a wider conflict should this blockade actually be enacted?
It is, I mean, like, yes, of course, if they do that, then it's likely to escalate into,
Hmm.
it's straight escalation if you try to block that, So that's
Hmm.
just nothing but short of it. It is 100% escalation. But in the present situation in the country, in Iran itself, I doubt that they would, because they're already very sort of, battered, and with the forces completely down and out. they wouldn't like to sort of go this way at the moment. They may like to continue with the war because they've had this experience of 8 9 years with Iran, Iraq. So they could probably just continue with that, but I don't think they would like to take this path. So we don't really need to worry about it. And hypothetically, even if they do, so I think they will probably, they have to remember, because many countries will not be with them, because even their allies will not be with them, because the allies, I mean, let's say China, or let's say China and India, so we are getting oil from other countries in the Gulf. So, by blocking that, you will certainly get into the bad books. So I think they will not do that. And it's also for their own political reasons in the country. I don't think they will. It's just a threat, I think, more than anything else.
Well, let's just hope that it is, in fact, just a threat. Good sense
Yeah.
prevails. So, with that, we've come to the end of this interview, and I can only thank you so much, sir, for being so gracious and forthcoming, at such short notice. And I really do hope that I speak to you again in the future.
Sure, Deepak. It's very nice talking to you. Very nice. And wish you good luck with the new venture. And it's nice to interact with you.